Where do you go with Colby and where do you go with T Wood? Each answer is just as complicated. And I don't think we've been in that spot before. I don't think we've been in a meaningful spot where it's complicated, but it's complicated for both guys. Let's start with T Wood. T Wood has come out and made it very clear I am not retired and quit talking about that. And quite frankly, when you go 25 minutes, I realize this was stopped a little short. Don't think you have to correct me. But when you go 5 rounds with Colby, when you go 5 rounds with Gilbert Burns, and when you go 5 rounds with Usman, each one of those guys has either held a title, holds a title, or is about to contest for a title. Okay, we can all agree that he fought the baddest dudes in the world, regardless of the outcome. Now, I had somebody else lay down the math for me in a different way than my broad stroke. And they said, yes, but of those 25 minutes times 3, that's 75 minutes of which he hasn't won a round. That's 3 full fights of which he hasn't won a match. And that's 15 rounds of which none have gone his way. Okay. Your math is a little more sophisticated of mine. I think you're a bit of a jerk to make it. I think you're a little bit of a jerk to look at the fact that he went 3 fights with the baddest dudes in the world, one of them after having his heart ripped out, known as his championship taken away, where guys are known to be on a lull, one where he went into a grudge match, stood his own. He did lose those rounds, but they were competitive. He stuffed a number of takedowns. He landed a number of strikes. His explosiveness was there. His speed was there, and his heart and grit was there. And I think if you do the math the way that you did it, I think you're a bit of a dick. I can't call you wrong. I cannot rewrite history and say 75 minutes didn't go his way, 15 rounds and 3 fights. Okay, fine. But if you're not willing to take into consideration who he competed, the adversity he dealt with, and the toughness that he showed, and by the way, he's got a broken rib as we speak. He had a broken rib the day he said, I am not done. If you're acting as though that's not a guy with heart grit, who's a tough SOB, you're also telling the story wrong. You don't like the way that I laid it out. Well, I don't like the way that you're laying it out. Because if a guy's a tough guy and he's in the 5-round club and all he does is 5-round fights, to act as though he has to be done when he can hardly even breathe because of a broken rib. If you guys have ever dealt with that, quite literally getting oxygen is a painful and difficult thing. He mustered it up from a hospital bed to declare that he is not done. Does he need to return to a main event? No, okay, let's say he doesn't. Is there anything wrong with the co-main event fight? Nope. Is there anything wrong with being on the main card at all? Nope. To take a guy from a main event to out of the business, I don't believe has ever happened before against his own recognizance. To take a guy from a co-main event spot and all of a sudden he's not in the business anymore, I don't believe has ever been done against his own recognizance. You generally get to work your way down the card and eventually you're out of the business. Look, you'll never be done with the sport, but one day you'll wake up and the sport is done with you. You do still run into a problem with a booking. You cannot put Tyron in there with just anybody because he's likely to beat him. And if you got a guy that's on a nice little streak and then they run into Tyron Woodley, it doesn't put Tyron back on the path for a championship, but it did just knock somebody else off. And you want to be cognizant of that. There's some politics in there. There's some balance. There's some games that have to be played. On the other side of the coin, if Tyron slips himself too down the ladder and loses, now we don't even have a conversation. Now it is no longer Tyron's opinion. He woke up and found out that the sport's done with him. And that's a very common thing, but I just don't know that you should do that to a guy that was a world champion less than 24 months ago. There's something about that I don't really love. Something about that, seeing a guy go out there, give effort, try, show that he's in shape, never missed weight once, had weight missed against him by Kelvin Gastelum, won the fight and said on the microphone, I'm not taking your 20%. I know I'm owed it, and I know the commission wants to give it to me. You worked hard for it. I've been in your spot before. You keep your money. Where's the appreciation for that? What did Colby ever do? I apologize. What did T Wood ever do to you that's made you so upset at him? You're right as a fan to see a guy rise and then see his fall from grace. Yeah, we love that as Americans, right? We love to see somebody get somewhere and knock him off their stool. Okay, great. He's fallen off of his stool. You were talking about getting rid of a guy completely who was the champion of the world and hasn't been less than a main event ever since. He hadn't been less than a main event years. 2014? 2014 to now, he has not been less than the top of the bill. I think you need to come to this with a little bit more heart, not to mention the guy can barely breathe right now, and the few words that he put together with a broken rib is, "I'm not done." That is something we would give a guy credit for. That is something we would get behind a guy for. I'm only reminding you of this because if anybody could use a little pick-me-up right now, it's a guy laying in a hospital bed after giving you entertainment against one bad son of a bitch in Colby Covington. And he walked out there and tried anyway in front of the world half naked on ESPN. There are times to have compassion, in all fairness, but there's also a time to tell a guy's story correctly. He beat Darren Till. He stopped Darren Till. Darren Till is one fight away from fighting for a world championship, and that fight that he has, by the way, happens to be a main event on ESPN. We're not going to throw Till away. So how do you throw away a guy that beat him? But we still have a problem. And the problem is, who do you book him with? Who do you book a guy with that does have those 3 losses, regardless of how they came about and who they came against? Because the likely suspects, as we were having the same conversation a week ago, would be your Usmans, would be your Covingtons, would be your Gilbert Burns, would be your Tyron Woodleys, but it would also be Edwards. Okay? It's also going to be Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards has not lost in 4 years and has not lost his last 8 contests. So to put him in there with a guy who's lost 3 isn't going to work. Okay, great. So now we've eliminated everybody. Tyron has fought them all, but can't fight this guy. So who does he fight? Many people are coming to you with an answer of Nick Diaz. It's not the worst answer, but it is a pretty bad matchup. I mean, it is, in all fairness. So now who do you want to help and who do you want to do the favor for? And there's always an answer there for somebody. Whether anybody would ever verbalize it or not, there is an answer. Nick Diaz is generally not the guy that you want to help. The fans are going to love them, but within the office, what do you do if he gets the win? Does he disappear for another 5 years, or is this the win that we can use to build momentum? Because that's what we're looking to do as a promotion. We are playing chess, not checkers. So if you're going to book Nick Diaz against anybody, you are already going to have in mind what is going to happen with a Nick Diaz victory to that person, or what's going to happen if that other person books Nick Diaz. If you don't know if they're coming back, or what they're going to do, or when they're going to do it, you're just faced with an interesting spot. That's where Nick and fun becomes very relevant. There's things that you can do are fun that are not significant to anything. Nick versus Connor is fun. End of story. It doesn't move Nick up in the rankings. It'll be at 170, so it doesn't have anything to do with Connor in the rankings because he's expected to go back to 55. If he's not expected, and I'm talking Connor, to contest for a ranking at 170, well, that's not a ranking match anyway. I don't predict for you that fight's going to happen, but I would predict for you that fight is much more on the table than putting him with a contender. I also suggest that because what do you do with Colby Covington? Colby Covington's the baddest dude in the world, and if he's not, then Kamaru Usman is, and they have to find each other again, and they will find each other again. But I just got confronted with news that I did not know. Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns has been announced. They're returning to Fight Island. I thought it was coming up in Fight Island. I just find out from a Dana comment made 48 hours ago that fight is looking to be done in February. I just found out from Kamaru Usman by speaking to Kamaru that he believes that fight's going to be in February. Okay, fine. But But now you see the problem with Colby. Colby, who is clearly a number one contender. Nobody's touched him. Nobody's gone close. Nobody's winning rounds against him except for Kamaru Usman. So to make believe if we're going to show integrity to the rankings, that we're going to keep Colby off the shelf. Let's say if they fight in February, when's Colby fight? In July? I don't know if I think I'm a little bearish on that. I think Colby's going to be looking for something to do, and Colby versus Leon really just isn't a draw. It just really isn't a draw. And what would happen if Leon gets over? Then do you finally give Leon his due and put him in there? Yeah, I would say that you would have to. What happens if Colby gets the jump on Leon? What happens to Leon? We all say, ha ha, told you so. You never got your opportunity even though you deserved it. Now you go back to the line. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's a cutthroat sport. I can't take that off the table just because it's mean. I can't take it off the table just because it's rude and cold-hearted. We do rude and cold-hearted things in this sport all the time. But I got to come back to the draw. I don't know that that's a draw. That could become a draw if Colby wanted it to be. Colby has a masterful way of making things very interesting. It just appears that Colby doesn't have an interest, so let's just take that one off the board. That is where you could insert a Nick Diaz. Is that going to be a competitive fight or even fair to do to Nick Diaz, a guy who has been gone for a period of time, to put him in there with the baddest dude in the world? And if you don't agree with that, then you got to agree he's second. But nobody anywhere sitting around a water cooler today is saying anybody at 170 pounds isn't the baddest dude alive unless they're saying his name's Usman or unless their name is Covington. It's as simple as that. And that could be disrespectful to Gilbert Burns, but Gilbert Burns has 5 rounds to prove us all wrong, and until he does it, those are your names. So do you want to sacrifice Nick Diaz and then make the leap of faith that Nick Diaz is willing to go out there and be sacrificed for the reward that if it's not a sacrifice and he can beat Colby, he slides right into a championship? I'll listen to the whole thing. I just have never heard from Nick that he's even back for championships. As fact, I heard when Nick said that he was coming back that there was a lot of big and exciting names at 170, and he's right. And there's some fun names. But Nick is in a very unique spot, like his brother Nate, like George Masvidal. I can't think of anybody else that would qualify for this unique spot of just having fun. It's going to be big. Hey, Masvidal, it's going to be so damn big. Hey, Nate, it's going to be so damn big. It's going to be a main event in the Mecca known as Madison Square Garden, and we're going to make a belt for you guys because you deserve it. I mean, that's a pretty unique thing. But you see the problem with the booking. Where does Tyron Woodley go? I think fresh coat of paint, 185 pounds. If he does not agree with me, then I'm standing in left field wearing a catcher's mitt. That's the way that goes, but that is what I would see as the fresh coat of paint, particularly if the ultimate goal is to return to a championship, where Colby, where T Wood is at now, and with the logjam at 170. If T Wood did everything right for 2 years, which would constitute 6 fights, and he won them all, and they were perfect, he is still 40 years of age. And putting him into a title fight, even with 6 perfect fights, is not likely to happen. I could use Leon Edwards as evidence, who did 4 years perfect, 8 fights, and is not likely to draw right into a world championship. So if we are looking for a path to gold, that's a very hard path to find, but if we are looking for one to gold and nothing else matters, the quickest path is at 185, in my opinion. Everybody gets a fresh coat of paint. We just saw it with Weidman and Rockhold. Those were experiments. Those experiments did not work. But had they worked for either guy, those guys would be fighting for championships, evident of the fact of who they fought and who they lost to. Weidman loses to Reyes. What does Reyes do? Fights for a championship. What does Reyes do next? Fighting for another championship. Blachowicz versus Rockhold. What happened? Blachowicz beat Rockhold. What's going to happen with Blachowicz next? He's going to fight for a championship. So I'm only offering you, when you have a former champion and he moves weight classes, special things tend to happen. I don't know that that's T Wood's goal. I don't know. But I know T Wood really well, and I'm pretty confident in telling you that's his goal, and I'm pretty confident he's going to need to heal his body, rest his mind, and move up to middleweight.